guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Okay, guys, we are live now. 1 second, it's really laggy here now. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Anonymous Bites Back Asia, episode 10. We'll be talking about coronavirus updates, Assange extradition trial starting tomorrow, and we'll talk about a US coup in Nepal. We gave an introduction earlier this week about the Nepal situation, and we'll continue with that tonight. If you don't know anything about this yet, you can, after the show, you can actually listen to the first part, and the Anand from Nepal explained some stuff about it. We'll try to explain again this episode, but if you are interested in it, that one contains some intel too. So, thanks everyone and welcome back, and please help to share this episode. It's what we depend on. So yeah, the entire panel is there again, so let's just start.
Welcome everyone. We are happy to have you on air with us. We will be talking about the coup in Nepal, and it includes so many other countries. It's not just in Nepal, but we can see it in full scale in Nepal because it's going on right now, and Anon Nepal is with us, and they will be talking about it in detail. Please go on, Master. Are you here?
I'm here. Are you getting my voice?
Yes, we can hear you.
Actually, MCC came in Nepal during the time of, I think, when Congress was in the government. And waited for the government, waited to be ratified from the parliament. So now we are facing a real trouble here, and we are getting to know that MCC is going to be implemented in Nepal. Only general people just got to know this year that MCC exists in Nepal. For past few years, we were totally unknown about MCC actually.
Yes, so you can also mention the full name of it, because our listeners won't know what we talk about when we say MCC. Maybe it's better to say its full name.
The Millennium Challenge Corporation. It's a part of US it was formed by the Congress of the United States, and US officials also claim that MCC is a part of their Indo-Pacific strategy and included Nepal in their Indo-Pacific strategy too.
So when your government first mentioned like this scheme would be implemented in Nepal, how did they present this thing to you?
How did your government introduce it to you? How did you know in the first place?
Like what did they mention about this?
Hello.
Yes?
Go on, please.
Master, can you guys can you hear us? Hmm. Oh.
Can you hear us now, Master?
It got viral on Facebook and social.
So you saw it first at social media. Is that how you got to be aware of it? I think that Master's connection is not so good.
Yeah.
Maybe the network have
Okay, I think like the network. I think like this like voice chat is a bit like heavy for the. Is a bit too much of load for the network because I heard that the internets are quite like internet like the infrastructure are not like as like very established over there. Sometimes there are still places without network. Yeah, so maybe we have one of our Nepal we have one of our Nepalese guests messaging in the chat room. Yeah. So we help them to read out maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So
So Pratik, first said that they came to know by some rumors online. So like it went viral on the networks, and then we're still waiting for.
Till the connection is better, we can give some short information about Nepal because our listeners might be wondering where it is and what about it. Nepal is an independent country in southern Asia between Tibet and autonomous region of China and India. It contains 8 of the world's 10 highest peaks, so it's a highland, including Mount Everest. The world's tallest and on the border with Tibet and Lumbini, the birthplace of Gautama Buddha, the founder of Buddhism. Visitors of Nepal generally associate the nation with snow-capped mountains peaks, while there are 90 peaks which lie above 7,000 meters. Approximately one-third of the country is low-lying and subtropical. The nation's altitude rises from less than 100 meters elevation in the tropical part. The world's highest mountain is Mount Everest is there too. I'm reading through our Unknown Nepal's notes about their country, about their short history. The British wanted a buffer state between British India and the Chinese Empire that ultimately controlled Tibet. So it trimmed Nepal back approximately to its present size and let it remain independent. Nepal is a country of highly diverse and rich geography, culture, religions, and political instability. Nepal faces many problems caused by governmental clashes, surrounded by the complex situation that is Nepalese politics. The fertile and humid south is heavily urbanized. By some measures, Hinduism is practiced by a greater majority of people in Nepal than in any other nation. A monarchy for hundreds of years, Nepal was declared a republic recently in June 2008. Nepal is officially divided into 14 administrative zones and 7 states.
Okay, so there's the general information about Nepal, and
Yes.
I saw read around the geography, and it's very insane, I would say, because actually Nepal it's sandwiched between countries like India, Pakistan, which goes on which there war quite some like there are some conflicts going on also, and also in India and China, which I forgot, is it called the Kashmir region?
Yes, it's Kashmir.
Yeah. So so Nepal, it's basically sandwiched between like a few conflict zones, and they had to sort of survive out of the chaos around big countries out there.
It is important to mention that Nepal was actually under British influence because when we start talking about how MCC operates and in what developing countries, some are old French colonies and some are old British colonies. It's important to mention this.
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of influence from the Western countries, the European countries, and also of course the US into the a lot of regions and Southeast Asia until today. So should we introduce a little bit more about the MCC?
Yes, actually, I would like our Nepalese guests to answer questions and mention more about it themselves, but I'm not sure about their connection.
Yeah, let's see whether they could type.
I can maybe I should play their audio file again they sent last episode.
Yes, it's a good idea for our listeners who didn't listen to the first episode. It would be good to give the general idea first.
Okay, well just keep talking. I'll try to load it. I'll tell you when it starts.
Okay. So it's useful to mention maybe that this Millennium Challenge Corporation is a governmental institution, and it's directly connected to White House. The CEO of this corporation is assigned by the United States President, and they operate in more than 50 countries. They are mentioned as developing countries, and MCC's aim appears to help them improve. But in fact, underlying factors are much more different, and we will see through it during our show in our discussions.
I don't wanna do anything because I wanna like sort of a bit like comment on this. I don't know if there are like people more familiar. We have a few guests more familiar who are more familiar how how the like China, because like China also use the same thing, like they use companies to influence like other countries by economical means. So well, at the moment I look at how how this MCC does, and was like, oh, that sounds like China companies going into like Africa countries and help them building infrastructures.
Yeah. So that's like
And
in previous episode, I also said that it looks a lot like China because they do it too to African countries, right? They say like we give out loans, and then they can't repay it, and then they will say like, okay, give me your harbor or something.
yeah,
It's like that, right?
yeah. I mean, like 99-year lease for a harbor.
Yeah.
Yes, it's almost like buying it already, owning it 99 years.
Yeah.
Then they would renew it, of course.
Okay, let me start the audio clip from the guys because I have it here now. I think it will be starting in 1 second after I click it. So let's see.
Thank you, host, for this lovely opportunity to express my thoughts in this live stream. Anonymous bites back. At first, I would like to talk about our country, Nepal. Nepal is a peaceful country present in Asia. A landlocked country surrounded by India and China. Now I am moving towards the current problem in our country. An agreement called the MCC Nepal Compact has promised to increase the availability of electricity and lower transportation costs, helping to spur investments, accelerate economic growth, and reduce poverty. But the reality of MCC is the worst part. It has victimized the countries like Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan and many more. The outcome of MCC is not peace but violence everywhere, war, blood splatters, and even more dangerous thing, we will become refugees in our own country. According to Article 7 Section 7.1. The government will proceed in a timely manner to complete all of its domestic requirements for this compact to enter into force. The parties understand that this compact, upon entry into force, will prevail over the domestic laws of Nepal. Meaning that it would be superior to the constitution, none of the internal laws can act into it. Nepal is a democratic country and the citizens have the right to choose between right and wrong. But in context of Nepal, no any formal information and knowledge was given to the citizens before implementation of this agreement. Dear Nepali citizens, we should not let our dumb politicians to sell our country, sell our pride, sell our history, and sell ourselves. We should raise our voice, sharpen our weapons, and gather strength to fight against it. If this agreement is implemented, then our children will beg for food in coming 10 years, our governmental system, laws, freedom will be ruined completely. In order to save Nepal and our generation, we must fight against it. If we won't stop this, the sacrifices of our martyrs, Arad Chand, Dharma Bhakta Mathema, Gangalal Shrestha, and many more will go in vain. Our history will vanish in thin air. It's the time, now or never. We have to save our country, our citizens, our generations, and ourselves from this slowly creeping danger. I would rather call MCC as demonic agreement. Now we should come out of shelters with arms, weapons, voice, and bravery to save our country. We are not alone, we are legions, we are many, we are anonymous. Expect us. Thank you for the time. It's brute force here.
Bahadur Shah, brother of Prithvi Naran Shah. Okay, okay. So basically, that time Nepal is a is a enemy with Tibet. So to fight Tibet, they established their relations with England, and England sort of, so that in that sense England gets involved in Nepal politics, and after that India, when India after India has went to independence, they they sort of like take over the role of England, and to meddle in their politics also. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, what it comes down to is that the British used the area as a colony, right? And then when it then finally then goes independence, now the USA is trying to get control over it again, but through financial means instead of military. They use money to do it, and that is by using this MCC thing uh, to invest in Nepal, to hand out grants to certain things that benefit them, and of course they want something in return, like they want the money back, or they want influence, and if Nepal can't pay it back, they want like control over this infrastructure. And the important thing is this is all being done without consent of the normal people. Like in the chat, Napoleon, he also says we didn't even know it was signed. We required to search for it to find out the truth about it. So, but they weren't even informed about it while it is about their own country.
Well, I'm doing a search in English news, and well, on the first page, it's only like one single news out of like 20 search results. Like one single news is like about a month, 2 months, no, 1 month ago, and that's all. Maybe I should load more. Nope, nope, nope. It's all coronavirus. Nope. It's very like no media is gonna report it. I don't see us. I don't see a lot of media reporting about this thing.
Yeah, the MCC's compact with Nepal was actually signed in the year 2017, so it was like more than 2 years ago. However, the fact that we are only looking into this thing right now is because the government did not inform the Nepalese about um, this issue, even though they are taking a lot of money from the US into like what they called a good cause, into eliminating poverty and rebuilding a lot of roads and improving the infrastructure in Nepal. But there's some really interesting thing in there because those good things usually is what the government want the people to know. They want them to know that like we are doing good things for you with this uh large amount of money. We're putting it into good use, but they were not informed. The people, that is that is ridiculous. Like usually that is not what governments do, and the way that they're not informing the people about this kind of good news means that there must be some kind of bad news in there, and it has to be huge.
Also, it's worth mentioning that these phases have different names. First, when countries make a deal with Millennium Challenge Corporation, they sign into it, and as soon as they sign into it, they are considered a member state, sort of. So they go through a threshold period. Threshold means that they are testing if they are eligible. During the threshold period, actually, the government officials are making deals with the MCC. They are having some secret meetings. They negotiate with the money that they are going to receive as a bribe, so that they will be willing to literally sell their country. These records have been leaked to Nepalese media, and you can hear in the audio in these media that government officials are negotiating with MCC officials about the bribe money that. So after the threshold period, if the US government decides that these foreign government officials are their puppet government, they are like convincible, and they can successfully invade it, then they go into compact period, so that these countries become compact. In Nepal's case, it passed the threshold period and they are in the compact period, meaning that their officials are already sold. It is very difficult to leave MCC once a country is a member state, and they can only leave if there is a political coup happening, and there is the uprising, and the puppet government is ousted and a new government is established. Only then they can really leave. And this happens only through blood, unfortunately, because they won't let it go easily. There are a couple examples to it, not many, but we can say that, for example, Mali or Madagascar were terminated memberships.
Yeah, so it's like pretty obvious that these things, the MCC are not only about financing for like the business part, but also a lot of politics was incorporated in there. Yeah, so I think we can give a little bit more information about the MCC background. So actually, the MCC does not allow all countries to join. There were there are criteria about the selection of the countries, the candidate countries. So the candidate countries were selected based on income. There's a threshold about I think it's the GDP of the countries, and then after that, there's another selection based on the candidate to be eligible. So on three main areas of the ruling justly and economic freedom and investing in people, based on these three criteria, they choose the countries that have good indicators in 20 qualitative areas, including three that were about public health. And then two other factors that are involved in there were opportunities to reduce poverty and generate economic growth within a country. So based on these things, the MCC choose their eligible countries to give them assistance.
Yes, and of course, when they do it, they make deals, long time deals with the government officials. Meetings are happening, and these things are never open to public.
Yes, actually for those things, I think, okay, so for the assistant, there were like two kinds of assistant, like you've mentioned, there's the compact. For the threshold one, it's a kind of short-term grant. And on the page of MCC, they said that they would try to help countries into being eligible for compacts. So compacts are a longer term kind of assistance that could last typically 5 years and can go beyond that. So like being eligible for a threshold is one thing, and then the MCC would try to help countries become eligible for compact. I think in there they're trying to mm, make those countries more reliant on that scheme.
It also says that MCC will never be involved in military operations. They will never send soldiers. But the problem is they choose these developing countries among those that have political instability. For example, Nepal was chosen after they had war between Maoists and government, which lasted till 2007. They were already suffering and they needed help, so the US and India sent armies to help Nepalese government. So from then on, foreign interest increased, of course, and they started getting involved more and more under the name of help. And that's how MCC gets involved and keeps taking over more and more institutions.
Yes, that could also be a really good reason why they usually quitted the plan on their side when there's a coup in there, because the people in power are not like no longer supporting them, because like they choose to help those countries when they were in political instability. So I believe the government that like got the power that time also had deep connections with MCC, and that actually indicates the US, like the US government.
And of course, with toppling and creating instability, again, CIA was involved in a royal massacre so that they would clean the opposition and would be able to plant their own people. Now, Napoleon is sending me some information about it. He's sending to our comment chat saying that Royal Massacre was planned by CIA and RAW. RAW is the Secret Intelligence Agency of India. As a result of MCC, one of the conditions is that India and US is asked about everything that Nepal does when it comes to passing laws and such.
I mean, like if they, because before, like before the, wait a minute, I think I have to find a bit, because I remember before the Republic, they actually had a had the, is it called a monarchy over there? The, like they have the royals over there. Yeah, so basically, um, if they massacre the whole like all the nobility over there, it's easier for the different state agents, or let's say like other parties, to actually plan a puppet to and act as the head of the state. That's what I think.
Yes, definitely. That's what I understand too.
Yeah, and Nepal lost a monarchy in 2008. Before that, there were 240 years of monarchy in Nepal. Uh, yeah, and then let me see. Yeah, and there was this huge massacre you mentioned. There was a massacre in 2001. Where a lot of royal family members were murdered, including the crown prince Dipendra of Nepal. Okay. Okay. Well, Napoleon, he's posting a lot of stuff about this. I'm not sure. Do you guys want to read this on the air? What he's saying?
It would be helpful.
I think Master is trying to speak, but we don't hear him.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Master, if you have any problems with your mic, you can also just type it, and I will just read it up for you. It's also okay. Or any of the girls can read it up for you.
So what Napoleon says is that Maoists were against monarchy, and when I asked, so the US and India helped Maoists by sending army, he said that that was a fake help to make it look like they have settled the case and their politicians can enter into Nepal. King Brandra was completely against any influence from outer countries. Of course, when he was against all kinds of influence, it is difficult for foreign influence to enter the country. So they had to first remove the king from power, and this is how their military were used. And this is why a royal massacre occurred.
Okay.
Oh, we can hear something.
Something was happening. Yeah, okay, that's again a very sad story, of course. I mean, the big international powers removing local governments in a country to take it over themselves. And if you're talking about the Maoists, they of course, especially in Asia, they have like a huge influence. And oh yeah, Master is saying even till now we don't have good government still, and there's no peace either.
Yes, because foreign governments would want to have it in instability so that they can keep their presence there with some kinds of excuses like MCC is pushing for, helping with infrastructure, helping with education. But in fact, more and more rights of Nepal as a independent state is taken away. And
Yeah,
what Masters? Go ahead, Smiler.
okay, I think for that we should mention how the MCC is linked to the US, because like on their site they mention themselves as independent. However,
Yes,
if you look into it, especially the funding of the MCC, it is very much not independent. It's entirely just under the US government.
exactly.
Yeah, so uh, I think you can mention about the tax thing. Let me just
First, I wanted to read what Master typed there. He typed that Till now, they don't have a good governance nor peace inside the country because there are disputes all the time. And the worst thing is youth are not aware of what is going on and about these sensitive national concerns because youth is purposefully being kept outside of politics and not well informed. Um, some kind of pop culture and distraction from social media. It is like in anywhere else going on. So what Napoleon says at this point is that UK hires army from Nepal, and he says, "Can you imagine we are fighting for another country?" So
Wait,
that
because I was thinking like UK hires army from Nepal. That quite because that one I think that quite that quite reminded me one thing about Gurkhas. Like
Yes, I do know about that.
yeah,
It
yeah,
those
yeah.
days, yeah.
Like Gurkhas were very famous of being like being wait, how you call that, like because they act as some, like somehow we take like a lot of like the United Kingdom, like like normally the Commonwealth countries, they regard the Gurkhas as somehow uh somehow I would sort like high, is it called mercenaries, that sort of like
Yes,
how
they are called that. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know if that's gonna like that's gonna sort of have a link with what he said.
so again, according to what our Nepalese guests are saying, India also hires army from Nepal, and UK also hires army from Nepal, so that the soldiers are invested in other countries' needs. And it would be more like slavery for wars. For the MCC's income and how they operate, actually, when we started researching about this subject, we were wondering how they found all this money to invest in other countries. Of course, they are part of the government, but they also define themselves as independent. So how this happened? It happens under corporate welfare that through legal system that has the corporate welfare, they can receive grants from government directly. This is happening with US citizens' tax money, and tax money is going towards these developing countries under help, but in fact, a total taking over is happening. UK also took army from Nepal during First World War.
Yeah, he's referring to the Gurkhas.
Maybe you want to mention them, Tree Fisher?
Because of um because many of like let's say because in within like the British Commonwealth former colonies, they're very famous. There's one thing like famous about it's they got these like Gurkha soldiers coming from Nepal who and being serviced in a lot of like Commonwealth countries around the world, and they are very famous as very fearsome soldiers. They and they were even there, and yeah, they were even said that so they're very fearsome soldiers, and they're closely associated with the Kukri, which is a local there which is a curve with a forward curving Nepali knife, very famous, and they issued like sort of being a sign of indicating like these these are the very these are the Gurkha soldiers. So okay, and our Nepali speakers over here, they will say they they were saying that actually it's their army, because normally because normally when we from let's say from a perspective, let's say from a perspective of a British Commonwealth country, we regard them as mercenaries, but our Nepali speakers, they say it's actually their army themselves, and then the Nepalese army are sent everywhere around the world. Yeah.
So it's actually the government who send the armies to places, not like um is it is it right? Like it's their own government who sent their armies to other places?
I think we should ask them
Yes,
about this. Yeah.
yes. For example, when the UK wants to send soldiers to Yemen, because they are worried of their own citizens' reactions if their soldiers die, because there is bigger media coverage and rejection towards sending more soldiers to faraway lands for nothing, really, personal gain. So that they actually send these foreign soldiers in the name of them to faraway lands.
Yeah, we really have to highlight that it's like when UK want to send soldiers, they do not just hire anyone else, but they also have the government of those countries agree to it, and those governments voluntarily send their soldiers there. It's not like they are under like big pressure, but they cooperate with the other countries like the UK to send their armies.
Yes, of course, because also they are given money, these government officials, for agreeing to send their soldiers for somebody else's war. They receive huge sums of bribery money. And this is how it happens, through corrupt government officials.
Okay, as of 2018, Gurkha recruitment for foreign service continues. It is still going on right now, and that matches our Nepali speakers. They say that it's happening right now.
And of course, these are happening like in exchange for when the US and India sent soldiers to Nepal to help them uh, settle the dispute, so that they sent soldiers and now they want soldiers from Nepal too, of course. It is some kind of dirty deal. It's a good idea to get back to MCC and what it is about in detail. And maybe Smiler, do you want to talk about Mali and these countries which were terminated?
Just a moment, I would want to look at that site.
Okay. So meanwhile, I can talk about it a bit.
Yeah, please.
We were looking at the list of countries and their status right now with MCC. And some of them were mentioned closed and other were mentioned terminated. Some are compact, some are threshold. We wondered what they meant, and when we researched into these terminated ones, we saw that every time when a deal was terminated with MCC, it happened because of some coup happened. These countries rejected foreign invasion and rejected that their government were doing this dirty deal. So they wanted to take over and get these foreign intruders out of their country. But these coups
Yeah, so
never happened peacefully.
yeah, the only two countries that were terminated were Madagascar and Mali. So, and both of them were receiving compact. So, like when they were receiving compact, it should be seen that they were more cooperative, and the MCC actually was thinking about a long-term cooperation with them. However, they were terminated as soon as the people in power in the government have changed in the coup.
And it's also worth mentioning that these both countries were French colonies in the past, and their country was in some kind of dispute all the time, with different political powers changing hand. And with Madagascar example too, it's not so much different than Mali. When the coup happened, the
Maybe mention the
previous
year.
president had to run away.
Yeah, so the Madagascar coup happened in year 2005. Uh, I remember you did research into the people in power before the coup. Can you just tell us again about that?
Yes, I am actually going through my notes.
Uh-huh. Great.
Can mention my example meanwhile when I go through it.
I think maybe we can mention about the MCC articles in Nepal, because like all these compacts and thresholds, at least MCC said that they were specially formulated for each of those countries, so it could actually vary quite a little bit. Let's see. So there's the Article 3 um, that we should really pay attention to, saying that the government grants to MCC a perceptual, irrevocable, royalty-free worldwide, fully paid, assignable right and license to practice or have practiced on its behalf, including the right to produce, reproduce, publish, repurpose, use, restore, modify, or make available any portion or portions of intellectual property as MCC sees fit in any medium, now known or hereafter developed for any purpose whatsoever. So here the concern for a lot of um, people in Nepal is that the US would easily take away their intellectual property, like by this article. And it's very ambiguous about what the MCC sees fit for themselves. Yeah, and it's
Wait,
also
see fit in any medium now known or hereafter developed for any purpose whatsoever. So it's simply like whenever like the Nepalese they sort of made something like amazing, like maybe let's say they okay, like I don't know, maybe I give a very wild example, like they sort of invented some like machine, some machine that predicts like an earthquake 10, like I don't know, 1 hour before it's gonna happen, and then the US can actually like produce the intellectual property for their own.
yes, I think that is what it's saying. And saying like for any purpose that they see fit in any medium now known or hereafter developed. Well, that's actually saying there's no rule. When we say we want that intellectual property of that thing, we get it.
Okay, so it's
Basically,
basically like
it's that.
your stuff is yours, your stuff is also my stuff.
Yup. Including rights to produce, reproduce, publish, repurpose, or make available. Yeah, even to publish.
So even like the Nepalese invented the thing, they're gonna like they're just gonna like outpowered by US for the sheer for the sheer industry, like the industry they have. Quite sure.
Hey, so
Uh,
I was reading into this text, right? But you mentioned the first part of Article 3, right? And then they have like all the rights to the intellectual property. But the second part actually scared me more, and that is government audits. And it says, except as the parties may agree otherwise in writing, the government will, on at least a semi-annual basis, conduct or cause to be conducted financial audits of the MCC. So that means they can even agree together that there won't be any audits. So the MCC can do anything they want, and they will not be checked by the government.
uh, wait, government audits? Oh,
A government audit, yeah, that means they just check all the papers, like all the expenses and what kind of income they have, right? But they can. It says like even in this article, the second part of Article 3, like you were reading, it says they can agree in writing that there will not be any audits anymore. So they will never be checked by the
uh,
government anymore. They can just do what they want.
so government has a bill, and they will like they will look at the bill and say, "Oh no, I think this is I think I will try to help you make it better, which fits my which also fits what I want. So I will write it, and then here's the final version. Don't change it." Is it similar to that?
Final version of what are you talking about?
Like bills?
No, like
I think it
the
means that like
finances, like
yeah, because all those things are about expenditure. So like how much was spent on each thing in that half a year because it's semi-annual. So they could just spend money on things that were not related to MCC, that were like for themselves, for the bribe whatsoever. And then if they just together agree not to have the audit, then no one would hear about like where the expenses were because that's what the audits do.
Yeah,
So
see,
yeah,
that's
they could just
exactly it. That's exactly it. Like you're saying it, they can just like bribe people,
Mhm.
and the government will not check into them because they agreed on paper there will not be an audit.
Yeah, and they could just like put more money into their own income, like the officials, take their own money and buy their own meals, buy their own car, buy those money, and as long as they together agree there would not be an audit, then like they could use anything. I mean, use the money for anything.
including sending him to US, I guess.
Yeah, and let me remind you that money, the compact money, is huge. There's like 8 zeros before the five, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1,000 million, 500 million were signed to Nepal.
Which is a huge amount, of course. If it's like US dollar with the whole exchange rate, you can buy a lot of stuff for that in Nepal.
Oh yeah, true, with the exchange in Nepal.
Yeah, I mean, these are incredible amounts to spend, and this is what's being spent now, but it can always like increase, of course. And if there's no audit, there's no saying even if they have even more money than that. Like, any billionaire can put like money into it, and because there is no checking of the books anymore. If the it seems like this MCC is above the government if they agree on these papers.
Yeah, true. Do you guys know whether these articles also happens to be in the agreements with the other countries, like MCC with other countries?
That is a good question, but just the guidelines are coming from mcc.gov. And it says resources doc program procurement guidelines, and that it doesn't say anything about a specific country. It is just uh, probably valid for their entire program.
Oh, okay. So it happens. Gosh, to all those countries.
Yeah, like they can't be audited by any of these countries.
Yeah. And should we
Process. Since I am back, I can mention about Madagascar and
maybe we should like go through the articles first because we're there right now, like kind of.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and Master here says that if the companies discover anything in Nepal, then it belongs to the US, and the people they can say nothing about it. And almost all government officials are ready to ratify it. The articles.
Oh my god! And that's just because they want a huge money injections or something. They will just do all agree with it.
Yeah, and he also said that if any point in the compact and domestic laws of nation dispute, then the points will be implemented and not the domestic laws of the nation. So it is actually above the nation's law, like above Nepal's law. This is actually like a US trying to rule them by this way because I don't know, like their own laws doesn't matter anymore. If there's something in the MCC's agreement that conflicts with their own law, then they take the MCC one.
Can you even like consider this like a sovereign state? When you got like when you
No,
got
I
like
don't think that.
another country controlling your whole economy.
Yes, definitely. It is the reason why they are getting involved, like by the disguise of helping education and building infrastructure, categorizing them under developing countries.
Yeah, and it's not only about the business, it's like about the laws as well. So
It is because they claim that they can't help otherwise. they have to be the counterparts in the laws. So that, in fact, all these articles that they list in the case of Nepal, they were only leaked to the media, local media. And before that, nobody were aware of it because they were being negotiated behind closed doors.
Yes, and especially until today, the public were not informed that this thing was signed 2 years ago with the U.S. government. So if they're not researching themselves online, they will never hear about this thing.
Yes,
And
definitely.
yeah, even if you have heard about the MCC, like if you would only be clicking into their website, it would seem perfect. Like you get a lot of money, they help you for those infrastructure, and then they also help other developing countries, so it should be legit. But it is not. You really have to dig into it. Like those things that they um, just put in front of you for easy research. Those things are not the entire picture of what's happening there.
I mean, isn't that the same thing as like those commercials? They they put like the slogan like say whatever free whatever on the like on the big slogan, but you see the small asterisks at the side, and you read the small text. You sort of know that it the kind of like it only applies to whatever situation.
Yeah, like condition applied.
Yes, TNC condition applies.
Okay, when you think
Oh
about it,
yeah,
it's
I
pretty
find it
insane.
now.
Like they put a company above governments. It's like the most shocking thing, I think.
Definitely. And how they deal with the economical side of it, the finance side of it, they say they are actually totally legal using the corporate welfare. Because according to corporate welfare related law, they can receive grants from the government, so that they are open to receive as much tax money as they can.
And another thing that our uh, speaker from Nepal really wants to like bring into light is that in the Annex 5, it's mentioned that the government must have submitted a plan in form and substance acceptable to MCC and consented to by the government of India. It's like that is an agreement between Nepal and MCC, but it has to be agreed by India for some reason, and that does make sense to them. Of course, it should not be making sense to anyone, but yeah. And then he also mentioned like from past long years, India has been illegally occupying Nepal's territory, and we are being able, we are being able to do nothing. They could not do anything about that. And also, if the U.S. exploits their resources, the government is also powerless into coping with that. So actually, MCC, like in his perspective, is a way that their own governments sell the nation away to the U.S., to the other governments, for example, like India.
Yeah, because when MCC lists these countries, these developing countries, most of them have political disputes already. So they are weakened and they need help. So when they ask help from any foreign government, of course, they get taken advantage of. There is so much to talk about when it comes to MCC. I just want to go back to this termination process because it seems that our Nepali friends are still typing, and till they type more, we can talk about it maybe.
Okay, great. Do you want to mention about Madagascar or Mali first?
Maybe I can mention Madagascar shortly because we can then compare the years and how it happened.
Yeah, great.
So the president of Madagascar was took power in 2001, and when they became compact, it was 2005. So we can assume that the new president made kind of a deal with the US government. Then it was terminated in 2009 after the coup. So this elected president was either the US government's man from start, or he got bribed to be bought by the US government after he came to power. Then other parties and the opposition rejected that their country was being sold to foreign governments, and they made a coup, and it was army backed. It is how it got terminated. In Mali case, it is actually a much clearer example, and it explains well how the UN and the African Union got involved with.
Yeah, it is very true. So actually, the coup in Mali happened in the year 2010, 10 years from now. And so at first, the army turned against the government um, in late March. Just like one day they turned, and then the other day they tried to have a new government that is democratically elected. So in the face of transition, they had another government. Um, However, the entire time the army of the country were actually fighting with um, something called the National Movement for the Liberation of Azawad. Azawad, yeah, which is an um, sometimes seen as terrorist group. So they were in war the entire time, and then like when the country was not stable at the time, when they were trying to elect another government in the transition period, that was also going on the entire time. So until October the same year. So for like more than half a year, they were in war. So in October, the United Nations Security Council actually passes the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2071, which approves the creation of the African-led international support mission to Mali. And the name was called International Support Mission. However, it was like for that maybe you were thinking about sending them resources or helping the people to escape from like the instability, the war, the civil war at that time, but that was um, not the case. So when there was the conflict in Mali, Actually, this African-led international support mission to Mali was to form another army. And by using this army, they tried to settle the situation in Mali. So there were actually a total of 21 countries involved. All of them were African countries. Most of them were neighbors to Mali, and these countries sent personnel and military force, and together they tried to take over Mali by military means. So in total, the AFISMA, the African-led international support mission to Mali, a total of 7,464 personnel um, to Mali for the military action. So what really caught our attention is that a lot of these countries were either like previously or at that time or in the future funded by MCC, and a lot of them actually received the compact plan. So those countries, just a moment. Oh, Amber, do you remember how many countries were involved? Like 12 or 15? I forgot the number.
Mm. At the beginning, there were 6 countries involved in MCC at the start. And then the number went to 12 countries, as far as I remember.
Oh wait, actually, before that, 7 of those countries who were also sending personnels for the UN military action were involved. Yeah, including, oh, I think I'm gonna pronounce those names all wrong, but Benin, and then Burkina Faso, Cabo Verde, Ghana, Niger, Ravana, and Uganda. So these countries were funded by the MCC before the war in Mali. And 4 of them were funded in a compact plan, and then the other 3 were in the threshold. So after this action, after them sending personnel there, um, like 6 of those countries actually maintained to be funded by MCC continuously. And then like at that time, there are also other countries who were not funded by the MCC before, but like they were funded in the year 2012 or after that. So in total, there were like 12 countries involved, which is more than half of those countries who sent their armies for the UN.
Yes, it is very important to mention again and again that UN was directly involved in sending soldiers, sending troops through something called African Union, in short.
Yes, and that African Union banned both Mali and Madagascar after the coup, right?
Yes.
Yes.
One
So
of the
going back to the personnel sent by them, actually they did not send a lot of people because those countries who were funded by MCC were already not rich. Like they have difficulties in sustaining their own uh, economy and infrastructures and so on. So, for example, some countries only send like 144 and 300 personnels for this military action, which, like when you're sending 144, it seems like you're really not involved. And personally, I would see that as not really want to be involved, but they have to be involved for some reason.
Yes, and also we should
Like they were
mention
forced.
that. Yes, we should mention that when these coups happened, actually the African Union and the EU, European Union, sent like some kind of notifications to say that they are displeased with the condition. And as soon as this happens, their termination process from MCC starts. It is like they are kind of in a process together with MCC. They are in parallel.
Yeah, that could be seen as evidence that MCC is not that independent. Like it depends on the decision of the government, not only the US but also their friends like European Unions and also African unions. They were all working together. Like one of them not really liking this situation help to change it.
Smiler, I can't hear you.
What? No, you can't hear me?
I can now.
Okay.
I could hear you before, so I think it is still on the stream.
Okay.
It is my connection lagging. Can you repeat it again, please?
Yeah, I'm saying that like the MCC is not only not independent with the US government, but also with the other unions like European unions and African unions. So they are all working together to try to control the world into like all those countries into doing things in only their way. So like if they're doing something that one of them doesn't like, then the others could also like um try to minimize the benefits those countries could get from them and so on. So for example, cutting the funding from the MCC is one of those means that they could do.
Yes.
The
So as you said, it
funding from
also
the
shows that MCC is connected to the UN and EU and African nation, and all these forms taking the name union actually act together, which is interesting. As our Nepalese friend sent to the chat, there is no such thing as government funded. It's all taxpayer funded. Of course, MCC is also operating through taxpayer fund.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's how it's supposed to be, and especially not corporate. So, all the money given to government comes from actual people. That's what what many people don't understand, is that actually the government works for the people, and that the government cannot give power to like a corporation from another country without even consulting with all these people who actually pay them. So, like, you are like the people of Nepal are like the CEO of the company Nepal, right? And the government people are the employees. And the government people can't just give all power given to them temporary by Nepalese people to some American company, MCC. What is that even? We don't even read anything about it. Nepalese people didn't even vote for it. So, yeah.
And meanwhile, in the US, most of the population talks about the elections and which party is going to win the election. Really, what does it matter? There are so many other things are going on. It's not about elections or who comes to power. The MCC was founded during Bush time, and after Bush, Hillary Clinton still was able to sign all these details, all these arrangements, and she was able to assign the new CEO. And after her, still Obama did this. Obama was doing the same, and after Obama, still Trump is doing the same. Really, there is no difference. Also, for our listeners who might wonder about these governments' political stance, they aren't even specifically left or specifically right, if you would call it, if you would want to call it. They are both socialists and left and right. It doesn't really matter. Really, these kinds of political stances are nothing. They don't have any meaning.
Guys, there's a huge silence. Meaning, did we discuss everything? I guess as
I think that we discussed most of the things that we planned for today.
okay. Now you mean regarding Nepal, right? I mean,
Yes.
okay. Yeah, because we will continue like in future episodes. We'll continue with talking about Nepal, of course. I mean, this we should continue to talk about it till like everyone is aware of this MCC and what it is doing to countries around the world, not just Nepal. I mean, Nepal is now the perfect example, but they're trying this with many other countries, and so the bottom line of what we discussed is that this is like a company, and they are giving this company, which is like connected to like the U.S. White House, they're giving this company more power over more power than the local government they are operating in. So that's very disturbing, especially because I think everyone understands that companies are not actually democratically led, not usually. They have like a CEO or like one boss deciding, meaning you're effectively dealing with a dictator. That's everything it is. Except if you have like a stock listed company, then the shareholders decide. But this is since this is a foreign company to any Nepalese or other countries they operate in, the local people don't have any control over it. They didn't vote for it. They didn't accept it. They're being overpowered by people they never chose, and they don't even know these people. So this is something we have to keep reminding everyone that this is going on, and you shouldn't be like apathetic to this. You should actually care about this, because this might not be happening in your garden, but it is happening in another place in the world, and we are all in this together, right? Corporate control, a new colonization method by the USA, practiced by other countries like China too, in Africa, like Three Fisher already explained early on in the episode. They're using money to get influence, and if you don't repay them, yeah, then you can give away your cities or your harbors or your train stations, right? So they're giving control outside.
Yeah, and it's not only about the cities and harbors and the money, it's also about the people, the lives of the people. They are giving it away. Like they are saying like no military action would be involved, so they're not like obviously explicitly asking for your personnel when there's a war or something like that. However, from the example in Mali, we could say that the obligation to send people um, to those wars is actually involved, because like if you're not doing that, they would just terminate the plan for you. Uh, it is not mentioned in their terms. However, it is there. Like it is there.
He would actually create a political turbulence before it is terminated, and things would come to a point that there is a coup, and only then they terminate the deal. Actually, before that, it appears that it's almost impossible to totally exit the program.
There was one person replying to our show, and like because we were talking about like Nepal, and we are also talking about like coronavirus. He's like replying like the only virus we really need to stop is the capitalism and the bankers. I think that in this
Yeah,
case it
that's so
actually
true.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard to find the symptoms in there. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not so obvious those symptoms of this virus.
Yeah, I'm not saying
Although, like,
I have like a good alternative to capitalism, but I do know how it obviously ends. Like if you have like this open market where everything is decided by money, then at the end a few big companies remain and they get control over the market. One or two companies either decide like price agreements or whatever, and they will try to get influence on other sides, on other parts of the country, and not just the financial economy, but they will try to get a government influence. And the thing is, like something like MCC is an example of how a corporation actually gets governmental powers. So you only have seen during colonial times with like British West Indian Company, Dutch East Indian Company, uh, colonizing the world, and we see it in some parts. We see it with the big oil getting so much influence in like U.S. government that they make government invade countries like Iraq and for oil, and that's how we see this happening. So this is one thing of like super capitalism, not the ordinary capitalism of like having your small store in the street and just selling like your products and making people happy or whatever with your products, but like this super capitalism where the big money gets control over government. It's probably a very dangerous thing.
Today, because we started a little later than usual time, our Australian and Japanese part of the panel aren't here because it's a late hour for them. But next Sunday, they will be here to talk about their own input about how they think about this MCC and similar subjects.
so should we move on to the other subjects now that our Napoleon guests or panels are not here anymore? Or should we like, yeah.
Yes, we can move on.
Okay.
Okay, then I think it would make sense for us to talk about the coronavirus.
Yes.
Like, yeah, now it seems like I don't know whether it's true or not, whether it's a picture painted by the central government in China, or whatsoever. But it seems like the numbers in China is starting to decrease a lot. Not like actually decrease, but the number of each new cases in each day, it's going down. So starting from this week, a lot of companies actually started working again. So like the state government urges those people to go back to work. However, that is not really good for them because like in a few provinces, the outbreak have started again because of that. Like there were outbreaks in companies in Shanghai and Guangdong and in Chongqing as well. Like we can totally tell from that gosh.
Is something going on? Are you guys cutting off? Or?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, can hear you fine.
Okay, perfect. Um, so yeah, in those provinces in China, the outbreak started again, but this time not just among the people like in the community, but instead this time is in the corporates. So a lot of factories and companies, and there were 14 cases of outbreak reported today. And then because of that, more than 600 people now are like put into quarantine again because they were close to those people who were infected and also later diagnosed. Yeah, so that's happening in China. And outside China, Korea is another country that really took the heat, starting from. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so Korea is another country that is starting to take the heat of the virus starting from now on. Um, so in Korea now they have I think more than 600 cases of the coronavirus, and alone in yesterday or the day before yesterday they had more than 200 cases only in one day. Yeah. And also so recently Japan has released those people on board on
Okay, there seems some technical issues. Maybe, yeah, okay, okay, Smarter. Maybe I'll just start about the Assange thing first, then, because I actually know much more about that. After that, we coronavirus. Uh, okay, well, Saturday we saw a lot of huge protests in defense for Assange and free press. Tomorrow, that's Monday, we're expecting even bigger protests because that will be the day that the extradition, the first day of the extradition lawsuit will start. It will be a long process. I mean, I think in May there will be like the last one or the next one. It's about extradition to the United States, of course, for publishing a video of war crimes committed by the United States Army in Iraq. WikiLeaks published this video. Nothing criminal about it, just showing the facts. Soldiers shooting children and journalists in Iraq without caring much, so like laughing about it. And it was published on WikiLeaks, and now he's being, they want him extradited to the United States. The irony in there is that the United States is actually the country responsible for the war crimes, and they're asking actually people responsible to judge on the journalists to expose them. And it's like, should make everyone angry. And another thing is like, he's no American, he's an Australian journalist. So he's a foreign person. And the thing is, we're all foreign persons, right? And if we start publishing the truth about United States and it causes us to be in danger of being extradited to the United States, while they are committing war crimes all over the world and showing obvious corruption, we're all in danger, because we can no longer write about it, we can no longer show people the truth, and we just have to accept all their actions without even checking up on them, without even showing the world what's going on. And so this is a danger to free press, and luckily a lot of journalists are now standing up for this, and not just journalists. I mean, pretty much the whole activist community is busy with this, and next to that we have certain politicians now standing up for it. We have, of course, UN rapporteur on torture, Niels Melzer, who pretty much confirmed that he is being tortured. He considers it a form of torture, that to actually spread lies about him, keep him locked up, not having the contact with the people he needs. It is a form of psychological torture. There are some suggestions that he's not being treated well in a physical way either. Like the last time he spoke in public, he was even unable to remember his own birth date and all these things. So now he's not a stupid guy. Like, if you, for some people you might maybe expect it that they don't remember such things, but this is like one of the most intelligent people in the journalistic world, and for him to be like reduced to such a level is obviously showing signs that he is not being treated well. And so in right now it is going wild. Like, everyone is like literally talking about this now, and there are huge protests, successful protests. We saw thousands and thousands of people in London Saturday, and people actually start to care now. They're starting to notice that their own freedoms are under attack, because that's the thing. The governments he has been exposing, the corrupt people has been exposing, they have attacked him back, right? And it has always been about him as a person. First there was like the a rumor that he was a rapist or whatever, that he worked together with the Russians and all these things. All rumors which eventually turned out to be just lies, and there was never any proof delivered, and it was all taken away again. But it was all aimed at destroying the messenger and not the actual message. And so some people who like say like, yeah, I don't like this Assange guy. Why should I even protect him? Well, like I explained, it is about all your rights. If you are not from the US and that you do want to talk about their corruption, you can be extradited to the US if it goes wrong. And that's something we have to stop. In his case, he will face 175 years under the Espionage Act for simply publishing a video, in this case, delivered to him, to his platform. So this is that's a dangerous precedent, and a dangerous precedent for all journalists and all whistleblowers. Whistleblowers, because when it actually turns out that it all going to happen, and he will actually be extradited and all these things, then we all whistleblowers, they will be all in danger too, and all journalists, and they will become scared to speak out, because no one wants to be in jail for 175 years. No one wants to be charged under the Espionage Act, and everyone will become scared. And now, Smyra, I see you are back. Because we were talking about the coronavirus, but I'm like, personally, I think it is going to matter even more now, because we're facing a possible pandemic with the coronavirus. And if this coronavirus hits like the other countries that are even like the EU or like the USA in large numbers, then it matters that we get the actual truth, and we have about the situation, and we have a lot of journalists who can deliver the truth. But if they have to be scared about everything they say, we won't get it anymore. We will get only like redacted truth the government wants us to get. So especially now, it matters that people actually think about this and that they actually do stand up for this. And there is a way to do this. We have the big protest tomorrow, of course, but we have more protests leading up to like the next part of the extradition lawsuit, and possibly more and more protests after that against the extradition. But tomorrow is going to be big. You can search for FreeAssange on Twitter or on other social media, or you can search for No Julian for US with that's a 4, so the number 4. No Julian for US. And next to that, we have a huge Twitter storm today. We're like kind of like preparing for this, and we're like doing this whole Twitter storm, and you should join with this, because on Twitter, as opposed to other social media, on Twitter you can get actually be global. And oh yeah, I see you post the list now. Okay, I'll mention them. I'll mention them one by one. And on Twitter you can actually get global, so join the Twitter storm, because we can make these politicians hear us, we can make these journalists hear us, we can really shout out, make it like a big shout out about this. And this is today, so to get to Twitter and help out with this. We should be starting any moment under the hashtag #NoJulian4US. So I'll mention now the protest locations for tomorrow. Even though the Amsterdam event seems to be missing, but there will also be one in. So I'll start. Oh no, the Amsterdam one is there now too. Yeah, I see it. Okay, so in the USA we have San Francisco at noon. The time is noon at the British Consulate. We have Minneapolis at 11:30 a.m. at the Star Tribune. We have Denver at 4 p.m. at the Union Station. We have Washington D.C. at noon at the White House, and they will march to the Trump Tower and the DOJ. We have New York at 11 a.m. at the British consulate. We have so that was the USA. We have Mexico City, 11 a.m. at the British Embassy. We have Quito. What country is this? Does anyone know this? We have the city of Quito. Okay, well, I don't see any details for this for the city of Quito yet. And we have the city of Baden-Baden at 5 p.m. We have Potsdam at 6 p.m. We have Cottbus. Okay, I have to do this again. Baden-Baden is 5 p.m. at the Stadthallenvorplatz. This is we have Cottbus at 7 p.m. at the Stadthallenvorplatz. We have Potsdam at 6 p.m. Stuyvenplatz. We have in the UK we have in Edinburgh 10:30 a.m. at Scottish Parliament. We have in London we have at 9:30 a.m. the Belmarsh prison location. We have in Dublin, Ireland, we have 10 a.m. at the British Embassy. In Barcelona, 7:30 p.m. at the Plaza Universitat. In Brussels, we have at 5 p.m. at the British Embassy. In Nice, we have at 6 p.m. Place Garibaldi. In Amsterdam, at noon, we have at the Museumplein. At so that's at noon. That's in Amsterdam. We have Berlin. We have at 7 p.m. at the Brandenburg Tor. In Vienna, we have at noon at the Karlskirche. In Athens, we have at 6 p.m. at Kapni Karea. In Ulm, we have at 4 p.m. at the Bahnhofstrasse, Galeria Kopfhof. And in Bern, we have at 4:30 p.m. Helvetiaplatz. In Ljubljana, we have at 3 p.m. British Embassy. In Adelaide, we have 5 p.m. Parliament Steps. Melbourne, 10 a.m. British Consulate. In Hobart, 12:30 the Parliament Lawns. Wellington, at noon at the Parliament Steps. In Auckland, we have noon at the British Consulate. In Brisbane, noon British Consulate. Sydney, noon at the Martin Place to the British Consulate. And Nora, we have 12 noon at the 59 Junction Street, CNR Barrie. And in Seoul, we have outside of the Hyundai Uplex department store, there's also a march. So I think I pretty much did them all now. I don't know what the Quito location info is, but I don't know. Search for it, a FreeAssange, try Quito, that's a Quito. It should be detail, it says details to be announced, so that should be details coming up. Okay, so I expect all of you tomorrow, February 24, don't extradite Assange. Global protests called Journalism is Not a Crime. So be there, whatever place is closest to you. And join us after the show with the whole Twitter storm, the whole tweet storm. We're all ready and we're going to make it big, so we're going to shake the platform. As we always do when we launch a large Twitter storm, so be part of it. This is going to be fun, and it's for a good purpose. So thanks everyone.
For Assange because it matters that we stand up against removing the freedom for press and free speech. It is an issue for everyone. It interests everyone. So don't let them take your rights away. Present and stand up against these wrongdoings.
Yeah, and especially like in times where the US itself is like trying to step in a lot of other countries, we deserve to know the truth. Like wherever country you are, you deserve to know like what the US is doing, and there's also potentially that they're doing something the same in your own country. Just because it's not exposed doesn't mean it's not there, and yeah, we deserve to know everything about these things. And like it is not a crime to expose these things because like at first place we already deserve to know. So even if you can't be in one of those locations, put your voice out there in Twitter or other social media, or just like talking about that to your friends and family. Make people know about Julian Assange. So shall we like go back to the coronavirus kind of situation?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, so it's going outside of China but to other countries. Uh so okay, I think we've mentioned about the voyage Diamond Princess, right?
Yes.
So they started to release people from that ship back to their own countries. However, like there were people who weren't diagnosed as infected when they were on the ship. After that, when they go back to where they live, like either other countries or different locations across Japan, there were like cases of infections like detected after they got released. So I think because they were diagnosed rather early, and they took a lot of time to go through a lot of different people. By the time that they finished with a part of it, because like there are also people who were not checked at all when they were on the ship. So because the time was really long, it is not accurate anymore about the result of the diagnosed cases. So now in Japan, they have 838 cases of the coronavirus, and then 12 were new from today actually. Yeah, so on the ship of the Diamond Princess, in total there were 691 infected cases, and now they have three. Um, and yes, and going to Korea, um, now they have 602 cases. I think like 2 days ago it was way below 100, but from yesterday and today, they found a lot of cases. Now it is suspected that there's a super carrier, which is female of 61-year-old. And then the reason why it got like I mean the numbers increased in such a short time is that this person went to a church, and that church has a lot of people, and they all eat together, and yeah, they attend those ceremonies for quite a lot of time, long enough for everyone to be um, not like everyone would be infected, but the risk of being infected, it's really high, especially like in a lot of countries outside China. A lot of people were not so aware of the virus, so they might not be wearing masks for different reasons. It's either they could not get to buy their own masks because the price of the mask are so much more expensive than usual right now, and some of the people just don't find it I mean they don't find dangerous, so they don't really see the need of wearing masks. So a lot of people did not take any precaution measures, and that's why the outbreak just um, went so quickly in Korea. And other than Korea, Italy was another country that had a lot more cases in these 2 days. So I think until the moment there should be around 79 cases in Italy. And the northern part is especially especially affected. And in Milan there should be like 54 cases already. So yeah, now 12 cities in Italy are um under isolation, and there are a total of 2 death cases from the virus right now. Right. Yeah, so in those 12 cities, the trains are not allowed to go in or out of the city. So they could not travel by train to escape the city. Like it makes sense that they close up some of the train station because um it is better that way to like restrict the outbreak from even going further. Yeah, however, the citizens in those city also express their fear that they might not be supplied enough materials, I mean resources like food or drinks, and they don't know how long the cities will be in quarantine. Yep. In and also like in some of those um, schools and university, they will be um, stopping the class until early March.
Okay. Hey, did we cover everything for today?
Yeah, I think we should have already done that.
I think you guys are very tired by now. I can actually hear it. I can actually hear the tiredness on the air. But I'm happy we actually did the show today. So we gave the good information about Nepal and the usual virus updates and tomorrow the big protests we had to mention too. So when we will close this episode, and when you tune out of this episode, go check out the Twitter storm, No Julian for US, because it's going to launch. We'll be doing this like minutes after we exit the show, and probably some others are already busy doing it. I've seen it kind of like start already, like the last few days. They're all, already getting prepared. They're already posting with this hashtag too. So just join in with it. Also, still use the FreeAssange hashtag. That's like the main big one, and if you want to confront like the mainstream media posting about this, they will usually use like Assange or Julian Assange, right? They are not part of our whole resistance, so they will mention the word Assange or Julian Assange, and if you use that in your tweets, you can at least speak back, right? And the people searching for his name and searching for him will get your messages too. So that's my advice, to do that and to actually hit the mainstream, hashtag his name, and hashtag free Assange, hashtag no Julian for US, and don't forget to join the protest on the street if you can tomorrow, all over the world. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening, and please share it around. And yeah.
Thank you.